broken things can become a blessing if you let God do the mending. Welcome to Broken to be Blessed Network, where dynamic women will share their experiences that will inspire, and experiences that have turned out to be a blessing. Now here's your host, Samantha McNeil.
Hi there, welcome again to Broken to be Blessed Network. Today I have with me Tiff Bernard. Tiffany, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing well, Nice to have you. I'm really happy to have you with us today. Okay, go ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. It's such a privilege to actually be featured on this network. You guys are doing an amazing thing. Sam, you're doing amazing. You're welcome. In terms of a bit about myself, my name is Tiffany Bernard. My nickname is Tiffiq. That's where you can actually find me on various social media platforms. And in essence, I am a Christian creative. I am a content creator where I focus about sharing my life experiences with others and also sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with other persons through creative forms. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I have a YouTube channel on Instagram and all of that. But in essence, that is where my heart lies. And it's been an amazing journey thus far. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Okay, awesome. So how is it going with your what you said that you do again? You like to
videos, vlogging, poetry. So my thing is very diverse. I do try to tap into different creative forms, and this is me just trying to challenge myself. But in basically just to reference my past, I have been writing poetry for quite a long time, since I was around the age of 12.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that if you always had that gift.
Yes, it actually runs in the genes. My family is very good at diction and writing, and it was just one of those things that I just picked up along the way. But it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I've utilized that gift into using it in church as well. So I've gotten very involved in creative arts in terms of speech chorales, spoken word, all of that. But yeah, very passionate about vlogging and poetry.
Okay, so what do you do for fun?
For fun, my life is very, 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 very busy. Fun is a luxury at this point in my life, but prior to COVID and all that's what's happening, I would say what I do for fun is I'm a very sociable person. I love networking, so I try to get out as much as I can. So I love to socialize with my friends. I love taking road trips. I just love even creating videos and just being creative overall. But yeah, and I love to eat out. I'm a huge foodie. So yes.
So what's your favorite? If you're a foodie, what's your favorite?
Oh gosh, what a question. I think anything seafood related is I am a sucker for lobster and shrimp. If I could get a nice jerk or grilled or garlic, but yeah, you're getting me really hungry, so I'll stop right here.
Lovely. Nice knowing all of that about you. So I guess right now you're just gonna start sharing your testimony with us. So go right ahead.
Yeah. So I love to share bits and pieces of me with whoever, because I feel like there's always an encouraging word when you actually get to connect with people, and there's always words of wisdom that you can actually take away. So in terms of one of my many testimonies, because I think persons always have many testimonies, but in terms of one of my testimonies, I'm going to be focusing on an era of my life where I had I don't want to say that I had self-identity issues, but if I was supposed to give a terminology, that's what it would be. But it kind of seems hard. or a harsh, like a harsh reality, so to speak. But there was a phase in my life where I was very indecisive of who I was as a person and what my gifts were. You know, I would always focus on my weaknesses and not enough on my strengths, and that just affected my whole entire lifestyle, just spiritually, just self-esteem, personally, just my overall development as a person. And it just took various situations. My life was just a roller. It is still a roller coaster. So it just took various situations for me to actually realize who I am and to cement, you know, who I am in Christ and to be comfortable with myself. So to expound, I know that was pretty surface level, but to expound a bit more, in essence, there is a blog post that I wrote. It's called Godfidence. It's also on YouTube. You can actually look for it at I Am Tiffiq YouTube channel. But that is a very powerful testimony in the essence of growing up. Oh, if you don't know me, I'm actually 6 feet 1 inch or 2 inches tall. But I was very insecure growing up when I was mostly pertaining to my height. I would slouch a lot. I just had a very bad posture, and that just spilled over into different aspects of my life in terms of being insecure. And I started to question myself in terms of what I was good at. I didn't feel like I fit in much in terms because I'm not a singer. Sorry, I'm not a singer. I sing also on the choir, but I'm not a singer. I'm just one of those people who stand at the back and try not to like go off key. But yeah, so it was my teenage years was very interesting, where I was just really trying to find myself. And that being said, it was kind of futile. My efforts were really futile, and there was a build-up of frustration within me, just not knowing what my purpose was. And it didn't take until going through as I said, a roller coaster, especially during my university years, where I became a bit more rebellious, or I'll use the word rebellious, in terms of contrary to my upbringing, that really helped me figure out who I was as a person. And that experience grew me, immensely as a person. And that's one of my testimonies of how God has extended so much mercy and so much grace over the years, helping to build my confidence, helping to just cement my identity and purpose in Him.
I think this is where Broken to be Blessed Network is birthed. That is where it's birthed from. Because a lot of times I find that people tend to like to see the finished product, and they never know that it's a process.
Yeah.
You see the smiles and you see everything, but you never know. And I know that there are some persons who are in the process, that they are waiting for persons who are a little bit ahead in the process, a little bit further in the process, to say to them, hey, listen to this. And I think it is so profound when you can testify to somebody that, hey, I've dealt with this, and this is what they are dealing with. It's like an eye opener for them. So you mentioned of your height, and I know how that can be, being a tall girl. When it's a boy, it's kind of cute and it stands out, but when it's a girl, it's much, much different. So how did you deal with this situation? Tell us how you dealt with it.
I just had to accept reality. I mean, this is who God made me to be, right? And it took some time for me to actually accept that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, regardless of being taller than my peers significantly. But it actually had to do with a lot of self-awareness and self-acceptance. And that's something that's not really, that happens overnight. So it's a gradual process. And as you mentioned, it's a process. Persons usually look at where you are now and don't consider what you had to go through. So in that regards, the process actually had a lot of pain. And out of that pain birthed purpose. And I'm so grateful for each experience that I've had, growing up, persons, ridiculing me of how tall I was, oh, you have long fingers, oh, how's the weather? It was just a whole thing for most of my childhood. But I've learned to grow from that and to not let it, even to this day, persons would actually make those type of remarks. But I've just learned from the experience and matured from the experience overall over the past few years. So in terms of something that persons can actually learn from, I would say that you have to be true to yourself. You have to stay true to yourself. You have to accept that God actually designed you. He wrote out the blueprint for your life before the foundation of the very world. And everything that he does, he is just perfect. Everything that he does is intentional. It's purposeful. So when we begin to question his work and we are his masterpiece, it just breeds room for a lot of doubt and fear and unbelief, and all of that is unlike Christ, because Christ just tries to give us faith and love and courage, and that's what he stands for. And anything that is the opposite of that is not of God. So I had to accept myself as the way how this is how God has designed for me, well, for me to be. So in the context of other people, persons might have maybe troubles with a disease or physical thing, something physical that they're not comfortable with. But it's for you to accept and to love yourself and to know that the most important thing is that God loves you. You don't have to worry about what everybody else has to say. You just have to focus on the fact that you are loved by a majestic being who carefully outlines he knows the number of hair on your head. Everything is just in alignment. This is how he wanted you to be. And if he was supposed to change something, he would have already done so. So that is the self-assurance that I bring to myself, and it's easy to actually get insecure sometimes, especially during COVID when you probably put on like 20 pounds. But you have to just accept yourself. Some things you can work on, some things you just have to accept. But yeah.
So true. So would you say there was a breaking point for you? Was there a point that you felt like, oh, I was out of it, or I couldn't deal with?
This is a very good question. Breaking point. I think I had several breaking points. It's just a matter of realization and accepting that this is the reality. And sometimes we are our biggest hindrance of getting over things. And it really all stems from the mind and how you choose to perceive things. So I've had several occurrences over the years that, were reassuring, helping to build my faith. And at the same time, there were other times I was being knocked down, 10 times lower than where I was. But I would say that there were several. But a huge turning point was when I decided to love myself holistically, just to be wholesome, just to marvel in the fact of who God has created me to be, to understand what I'm good at, not to compare myself with other people, to look at their strengths, to look at their talents and gifts, but to focus on what God has done for me and what he has instilled in me. Because when you focus on other people's journey, you get so bombarded with such negative thoughts, and you can be filled with strife and envy and jealousy, and it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. But when you shift the focus, if you shift the focus on yourself and on God, it's just wondrous, to be honest. So I've had many, so I'm indirectly answering your question. I've had many turning points of realization.
But what I want though, I want you to share. I want you to share something, because I want this to be as real as possible. So the one that you can share to let somebody know that this is it. So when they listen to you, they don't just, because as I said to you before, there are persons who look at the perfection and they will listen to this and say, okay, she have all the answer for everything, but I want you to share with them. What was the breaking point for you? Like, what were some of the things that were in your mind? What were some of the things that were said to you? All of that. So when persons listen to this, they can know that it is something that has been real and it has hit me, and this is how I have dealt with it.
Well, in that regard, I can definitely share. I think it was more so in either the latter part of my teenage years or the early part of my 20s, where I just had to learn how to accept myself. And I remember there was a distinct point in time where I was wrestling with God, and I'm like, God, my mind was just not for church or just not comfort. I was just all over the place in terms of emotions. And I think it's natural because we're all humans. We all go through that phase.
Yes.
And it's as I said before, it's how you choose to perceive yourself and how you choose to perceive God. So an instance where I was wrestling with God was just pouring out my frustrations and letting him know that I'm aware of what I would call my, shortcomings or my flaws or my weaknesses. I don't have the perfect past. Everybody has a history. Everybody's history can be turned into a message. And my university years were something else, to say the least. And it wasn't until I was in university I realized how much more prevalent, my shortcomings or my flaws were to me. And being exposed to different people and people pointing things out, and I'm like, I kind of feel insecure about this for real. Or so sometimes people would say things that would, inflict hurt or would let you second guess yourself. And I've been through that phase where I've doubted myself so much. I didn't feel like, okay, maybe I'm too tall, nobody will like me, or there's so many instances that I could refer to in terms of insecurity. For example, not knowing my purpose, not knowing as I said, university was a whole wild ride. So coming back into church was a very hard transition for me, because right after university, I was actually working in the hospitality industry, and I was working on weekends, so I didn't go to church that much. And not getting that food, that substance that you'd want every week actually dwindled my faith a bit. And I remember getting so frustrated, and I'm like, God, I really need like a breakthrough. I need you to make a way. I need you to, prove to me who you really are. Like, I've had a messed up past. This was me transitioning, trying to get my mind back into church. And I'm like, God, I really had a messed up. I've done so many horrible things in my life. But I know that his love was still there for me. And I know that he still, regardless, loved me of my flaws and all. And I remember I got to a point of getting frustrated of just praying the old regular prayers and just being real about it. And I'm like, God, I am just sick and tired. And you can tell God if you're sick and tired.
Yes. And that is what we want to bring out here today. Yeah. We want people to know that we are human and you get there. So we want to hear persons who can say, hey, I've been on my face, I've been on my knees. Yeah. I was like, but so. Yeah, and it's overall, my journey has been quite interesting, to say the least, because as you're saying that, there is just so many scenarios just playing in my head where I could just share, but I could be talking for like 2 hours if I just go right into them. But what I'm trying to say is that there is stuff in your life that you won't be comfortable with. I was never comfortable about my height growing up, especially in primary school. When I went to university, I was kind of more insecure about being that church girl, and then there was, being really tall and just other things, adding on to that, and social pressures, and then transitioning from that and just trying to
be grounded and trying to understand yourself and trying to know what your strengths are and know what my purpose is and know what my identity really is about. Because you call yourself a Christian, but you're like, do I really understand what a Christian, what it really takes to be a Christian and to really embody those fruits of the Spirit? And that's something that I had to grow, to learn, and to apply to myself and try to ensure that I'm embodying that of which is a Christian. And so I would say that too many breaking points, Summons. I can't even tell you. There's just so many, but I've gotten so frustrated with God sometimes, and I have to be like, God, I need your help. I can't do this. I see myself in X life. I don't want to see myself like this anymore. I want to value myself the way how you value me as a child of God. And you have to have those raw conversations with God. You can have raw conversations with your peers and tell them how you feel, but venting can go so much and no more. The real turning point is when you actually take those frustrations to God. And that's what I did. Every frustration that I've had, every obstacle that I've had, I found no satisfaction in myself venting to somebody. I found greater satisfaction in venting to God and being honest, being completely vulnerable in His presence. So let Him know, God, I don't like how I feel about this, about myself. I don't like the mistakes I've made in my past. I don't like who I am right now. And He's the one who will instill that word in that point in time to help to instill that change that you need, whether it's spiritually or in your mind, whatever it is. But what I can say is, if you're at a point in your life where you are not content with yourself, if you know that you've messed up, if you know that you're very insecure about your physical parts of your body, or you're just not overall possess very high self-esteem, my best advice to you is to just talk to God. Just lay your burdens, cast all of your burdens, tell Him everything. He's supposed to be your bestest friend ever. So there should be no hesitation about. I know sometimes when the situation happens, it's kind of hard to actually talk to God. Yes. But it's that breaking point where you at least attempt. And for me, and I think this is where my creative journey actually ignited in my adult years, where I found it so difficult to talk to God about certain things. Like the words are in my mind. Yes, you can pray in your mind, but sometimes when you speak, when there's an utterance, there's a shift, in the atmosphere yourself. But I found it so hard. It's so hard to pray when you're going through those frustrations. And what I started doing was to write. I started literally writing letters to God. I started just having a diary. I would always make notes in my phone. If I don't have a book nearby, I'd make notes on my laptop, whatever it is. I would just pretend like I'm sending an email. Dear God, this is how I'm feeling today. And that just transitioned into my creative journey, where I just started writing. And whilst writing, I just started encouraging myself. I started looking at the word, and I'm like trying to cross-reference, and I'm like, yes, okay, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling so much doubt and feeling so much fear. But then I remember Joshua, and Joshua said, be strong and courageous. When you reference scriptures like that, it makes a whirlwind of a difference. So that's how I've been encouraging myself for my 20 plus years of my existence. But yes, so that's my encouragement when you are frustrated, when you are feeling so much pain, when you are on your face. The best thing to do is to seek God. And it's easier said than done, but it's the best thing to do. So there's no satisfaction that you'd feel in venting to others as much as when you lay it down before God. And man, yeah, I feel like I'm preaching a sermon, so I'm gonna make it accent.
I'm empowered, so your preaching is working. It's working. And I'm just sitting here and I'm looking and I'm just thinking, because my experiences are totally different. And I based on where I am, always been a counselor, I been a youth leader, I would deal with young persons. But I tell you, there's something that is just so powerful when you have experiences. So I want to, when I sit down and I listen to you, I'm just like, oh, thank you, Lord. Because when you're going through the situation, you're like, oh God, why me? Oh God, why this? But then when you come out and when He takes you through the process and you're out, and now we're here today, before we were even thought of, God predestinated this time, this hour. And He knew that all my experiences, I would have felt broken, and then He turns it into blessing. And then there was going to be Broken to be Blessed Network, and then you would have been on the other side of town, and then we would come together, and then we will be able to empower other young persons who are struggling. And even right now, in this time and this season, I know that there are so many of them that are struggling, insecurities, identity issues, and we know, especially from where we are from, I think it adds more to it and all of that. So it's just so powerful that we can really share like this. And I know that there are persons out there who are waiting to be empowered and to be encouraged. So I really thank you today for sharing with us. And God is good. But one thing I want to ask you before you go is that have you overcome the insecurities, or are you still striving to?
I would say that there's some things that takes time, and time meaning years upon years. And sometimes you'd feel like you'd make progress, and then something happens and it just reminds you of what your insecurities are, and that's completely natural. So I would say, for the most part, especially about my height, I deem myself a queen. I am a queen. I'm a 6'1" queen, and I am comfortable with myself. And as it relates to the other facets of my life, I have been content with where I am, and I'm in a much better place in terms of how I perceive myself and how I perceive God, and I feel whole. And that's the beauty of when you actually lay down everything in front of God, when you tell God, you pour out your heart onto God. So every little doubt and insecurity that I had about myself, everything, I just laid it before God, and I've just watched how He just instilled. And the funny thing is, there was this pastor that said something years ago, that we oftentimes pray for strength, but we're reluctant to go through trials. And those trials prove the strength. So we just have to know that if we're asking God to change us from this insecurity or this situation or this circumstance, He's going to give us trials to test if we have really changed. So I've always find it as a stepping stone to getting better. There is always room for progress, room for improvement. So God has been good. I'm not merely as insecure. I don't even consider myself insecure. But yeah, God has been really good to me. You said something that I have to add, Samantha, before we go, is that for persons who are in a situation currently where they're battling with any forms of insecurity, whether it comes on to physical or spiritual or whatever it may be, just know that you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be patient with yourself. Sometimes you want to have that change overnight and have everything else figured out ASAP, but God, timing doesn't work like that. So we have to understand the process and know that every single step of the process has a purpose. So one day we might be on a mountain top, the next time we might be in a valley, and everything is for a purpose. So yeah, just felt led to share that bit.
Yes, because I was thinking about it. What would you leave with the listeners today? What's profound? And I'm sure, as I said before, that there are persons who are waiting to hear testimonies like these to really encourage them and to build their faith. So thank you very much again for sharing and for joining. Thank
It's my
you, and have a
pleasure.
wonderful
Thank
rest
you.
of the evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.